I think we have some extras available. Just raise your hand, Alan will get it to you. First of all, I want to thank Alan Myers before we start for all the hard work he does year after year on making our program such a success. Again, okay. Let me start all over again. I guess we had some technical difficulties, but everything's been straightened out now. So welcome to all who are attending this very important memorial service. It is very timely and apropos with what's going on here in this country and around the world at this time. And I'll be beginning the program with some opening remarks. I'm going to read them from this pamphlet I received in the mail from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. It's titled, "What You Do Matters." Here's an introduction. Few chose to act during the Holocaust to help rescue Jews. For those who did help, the risks associated with their actions were real and the consequences deadly. Some rescuers are well known: Swedish diplomat Raoul Wallenberg in Budapest, the German industrialist Oskar Schindler at his factory in Poland, and Miep Gies, who hid Anne Frank in the Netherlands. But most are less familiar. But rescue efforts by ordinary people from every walk of life show that individuals have the power to make a difference. These are their stories. I'm not going to go through each one. You are available to look at this later on if you wish. I'll let you. But here's one who stands out. It was Nobuki Sugihara, son of Shion Sugihara. He never imagined that he was doing any heroic action. But hundreds of Jews survived the Holocaust because of his willingness to disregard orders and help those in danger. He issued visas through the Japanese embassy for hundreds of Jews so they could escape to safe havens in Europe. Here's a quote from Elie Wiesel, Holocaust survivor and author. "I don't want my past to become anyone else's future." Never again begins with you. Remembering the past can transform the future. A living memorial to the victims of the Holocaust, the museum seeks to ensure the lessons of the past will shape a better tomorrow. Again, what you do matters. And that's why we're here today. Again, we know what's going on, the rampant anti-Semitism that's going around on college campuses now and is spurned into our general society. And it's a frightening time for anyone who's a Jewish person. And unfortunately, it's a global problem. It's spreading around the world, and Israel, unfortunately, stands alone again. The only salvation we have is in our firm belief in Hashem, that he will uphold his everlasting covenant and never let the Jews perish from off the earth. But again, nobody's standing with us. The Jewish people of the world are standing alone, but they need to stand up. And next, Cantor Zev will take the podium to lead us in Hatikva.
Please rise.
Sophia. Tikvateinu, Hatikva Bachnodayim, Leonam Choshi, Be'artzeinu, Eretz Zion Birushalayim, Leonam Choshi, Be'artzeinu, Eretz Zion Birushalayim. Thank you, Cantor Zev. That was a wonderful recitation of Hatikva. Next is Zachor, a preliminary prayer. Alan, do you want to lead us in the prayer, please? Do you want people to read them? Okay. 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 We're going to change, instead of having an individual reading by Alan, we're going to make this a congregational reading. So we need volunteers. If you're looking at page 3, the preliminary prayer, the volunteer will read the small letters, the gist of the text, and the congregation here will respond with Zachor lo tishkach, we shall not forget. So, Bernie, you want to start us off in memory of the helpless infants? No, you can read it from there.
In memory of the helpless infants, children, teenagers who were cut down like young trees before their time.
Zachor lo tishkach, we shall not forget. Jim, you want to take the next one?
In memory of all mothers who died with their children in their arms.
Zachor lo tishkach, we shall not forget. Okay, Jenny, you want to take the next one?
In memory of all mothers and fathers who were cruelly separated from their families.
Zachor lo tishkach, we shall not forget. Okay, Marion, take the next one.
In memory of all scholars, teachers, rabbis, who were persecuted.
Zachor lo tishkach, we shall not forget.
In memory of the heroes of resistance who fought the Nazis, so few against so many.
Zachor lo tishkach, we shall not forget.
In memory of the martyrs who gave their lives to help their brothers and sisters under the Nazis.
Zachor lo tishkach, we shall not forget. Okay, we're going to continue with congregational readings. Turn to page 5, Remember a Child. Barbara, you want to start? You please read the first paragraph.
More than 15 million children.
It's page 4.
Oh,
Page 4.
I don't. Oh, so more than 1.5 million children under the age of 18 were murdered during the Nazi extermination rampage through Europe known as the Shoah or Holocaust. So complete was the devastation that most left behind no family members able to recite the Jewish memorial Kaddish prayer in their behalf as called for in Jewish tradition. we have undertaken a program that will allow dedicated Jews to fulfill this mitzvah by agreeing to the best of their ability to recite the Kaddish in memory of one particular murdered child. There are 5 opportunities to fulfill this mitzvah during the year. The Yizkor services plus the annual Yom HaShoah observance.
Okay, Ruth, can you continue all the way from won't you consider all the way to a wallet reminder card?
Won't you consider becoming a participant in this effort to keep the memory of those lost children alive? There is no cost, only a commitment of your willingness to fulfill this important mitzvah. Any Jew of bar mitzvah age or older is invited to participate. Once you sign up, you will be provided with the following: a fact sheet about your child based on reliable testimony drawn from the names database at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, a certificate suitable for framing, attesting to your commitment to carry out this mitzvah, a wallet reminder card listing upcoming dates when you are expected to recite Kaddish for your child. Here's what you need to do next. Go to www.rememberachild.com and download the participation form, or pick one up at your temple office. Complete the form and turn it into your temple office. You will shortly receive your participation package containing information about your child and instructions about when to recite Kaddish in his or her memory.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Please turn to the next page in your program titled Remembering the Holocaust. These are additional congregational readings. They're numbered. So, Jack, would you start with number 1, please?
1. The 27th day of Nisan is the day on which Jews throughout the world formally recall the 6 million Jews of Europe who were tortured and murdered during the Second World War because they were Jews. It is a time when we recall the splendor of their lives as well as the terror of their deaths. Countless memoirs and diaries written by survivors plead and demand that we remember the details of how they were degraded, brutalized, and killed. We recall part of what they witnessed, part of the horrors that they suffered, in order to remember them and to remind others.
Debbie, could you read number 2, please?
She doesn't have to.
Go ahead, Lou.
Here are some of their words. The train was waiting for us with our escorts for the journey. Here we received the first blows, and it was so new and senseless that we felt no pain, neither in body nor in spirit. Only a profound amazement. How can one hit a man without anger? There were 12 boxcars with 650.
Okay, Aaron.
Debbie, read number 3.
Debbie, read number 3. Aaron, go ahead, please. Number 4.
On May 7th, 1942, the Germans decreed that those living in the Chernobyl ghetto were not to have children. Every child born would be shot together with the mother. Nevertheless, children continue to be born in the Chernobyl ghetto. I shall never forget one Brit ceremony in particular. A young couple who had been childless for 5 years was blessed with a child, a baby boy. They had decided to move to a building next to a technical high school so that the noise of the machinery existing camp empire of Austerlitz did not consist of just one camp, but rather of some 40 camps.
Thank you, Aaron. Barbie, continue at number 5.
The real Auschwitz was constructed on the outskirts of the town of the same name. It had a capacity of about 30,000 prisoners and was, so to speak, the administrative capital of the complex. Then there was the camp, or to be more precise, the groups of camps of Birkenau, which grew to contain tens of thousands of prisoners, in which the gas chambers and the cremation furnaces functioned.
Okay. Alan Perlman, could you read number 6, please?
There was mud and suffocating summer dust. The blocks of huts were low, dirty, with drafty wooden sides, and beaten earthen floors. There are no bunks, but bare planks all the way to the ceiling. Every 1.8 by 2 meter plank had up to 9 people on them. From the tiny window, you could see the ruins of the cremation furnace. In her day, one saw the flame issuing from its chimney. What is that fire, someone asked. And the reply came, it is we who are burning.
Number 7, Susan, please continue.
Okay. Not far from us, flames were leaping up from a ditch, gigantic flames. They were burning something. A truck drew up at the pit and delivered its load. Little children, babies around us. Everyone was weeping. Someone began to recite the Kaddish. I do not know if it has ever happened before in the long history of the Jews that people have ever recited a prayer for the dead, for themselves. Never shall I forget that night, the first night in camp. Never shall I forget that smoke. Never shall I forget the little faces of the children, whose bodies I saw turn into reeks of smoke beneath a silent sky.
Okay, Sharon, can you read number 8, please?
Oh, the night of the weeping children, oh, the night of the children branded for death. Have not entered here, terrible nursemaids, that usurp the place of mothers. Instead of mother's milk, panic suckles those little ones. Yesterday, mothers still drew sweet towards them like a white moon. There was the doll with cheeks, relieved by kisses in one arm. The stuffed pet already brought to life by love. And the other, now going to the end of dying, blows the shift over the air that no one will come again.
Okay, thank you all who participated. Please turn to the next page in your program. Jenny Levy will be called to the bema, and she will recite Remembering the Holocaust.
Remembering the Holocaust. When we light these candles, we vow never to forget the lives of the Jewish men, women, and children who are symbolized by these flames. They were tortured and brutalized by human beings who acted like beasts. Their lives were taken in cruelty. May we be inspired to learn more about our 6 million brothers and sisters as individuals and as community, to recall their memories throughout the year so that they will not suffer a double death. We recall not only the terror of their deaths, but also the splendor of their lives. May the memory of their lives inspire us to hallow our own lives and to live meaningful Jewish lives so that we may help to ensure that part of who they were shall endure always.
Turn to the next pages in your program. It's the candle lighting ceremony. This year, we're going to do the candle lighting ceremony a little differently to increase more participation of the congregation here. We'll have a candle lighter, and an accompanying person will read the prayer for each candle.
With this candle of remembrance, we vow to remember the struggles and suffering from the past. Hitler's goal was not to end life, but to wipe out its memory as well. If we forget those who perished, they die a second time. We will remember.
Okay. That was our featured speaker today, Ildi Good. She's a child Holocaust survivor. Candle number 2 was lit by Marion Rosenberg, and her husband Norbert will read the second blessing.
This candle of light, we vow to make the choice of God today, as we remember the tyrants and people who would make our lives a curse. May we strive to make it a blessing. We choose life.
Okay, Jenny, before, take someone to go out with me. And third candle will be lit by Ruth. You going to light the candle? Oh. Okay, Norbert, go ahead.
With this candle, we give thanks to the land of Israel, for messages that the people of Israel live. We hope that our holy land stands for much more than physical survival alone. May it stand for justice, may it stand for hope, may it stand for peace.
Okay, we're on the fourth candle. Ruth, are you going to light it? Ruth Zukowski is going to light the fourth candle, and her husband Jack will be reading the blessing.
With this candle, we reaffirm our commitment to the light of Torah. While others may try to act as if they were divine, let us continue our search for the understanding of our responsibilities in God's divine plan. May our lives reflect the values of our faith.
Jenny Levy will light the fifth candle. Do you wish anybody else to accompany you?
This is the candle of faith. May we remain faithful both to the memory of our ancestors and the commandments of our God. May we retain faith that knowing that our prayers will be answered, that war and suffering will disappear, that cruelty will be no more, that hatred and injustice will disappear from the face of the earth. May we live up to the memories of the martyrs of the Holocaust and so many others who faced darkness in past generations, who faced the darkness with the light of faith. As we light these candles, let us dedicate ourselves to lives of action. May we never forget the lives of the Jewish men, women, and children who are symbolized by these flames.
That was Barbie Abramowitz lighting the sixth candle. Jenny, could you read the fifth blessing? I think we skipped that. Yeah.
Nations are individuals, may be good or bad. May all nations of the earth learn from the horrors of the Holocaust and use our powers for good and for peace. May we heed the prophetic call. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, nor shall they learn war anymore.
That concludes our candle ceremony. Thank you, all participants who helped us in this very meaningful ceremony. Okay, Camp Cottage. Camp Cottage? Yeah. Okay. You want to join me? Unless you want to use the other one? All right, you can turn to your program to the next page. We're going to do the Camp Kaddish in memory of all those who perished in the Holocaust. Alan will read the Hebrew, and I will recite the English. Alan, begin. Auschwitz, Lodz, Ponar, Babi Yar, Maidnik, Birkenau, Kovno, Janaska, Theresienstadt, Buchenwald, Treblinka, Vilna, Bergen-Belsen, Mauthausen, Dachau, Minsk, Warsaw. Amen. Minchemaya, Olenu Bialko Yisrael. Amen. Asem Shalom Bimromov. Huyaseh Shalom. Olenu Bialko Yisrael. Bimru. Amen. This is just information, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
So what's next? Who's going to sing this song? Fran? Please turn into your program to the songs. Still den Nachts is Eusengestart. And Fran Chalin, our guest cantor, will be singing this song. Yeah.
You have the translation there, but what's very important about this song is Hirsch Glick used three different names for three different languages for the word gun or pistol because he wanted to acknowledge that those who were part of the partisans movement came from different countries. He used a Russian word, he used a German word, he used a Yiddish word, and he used those words to say that, that there were so many in the resistance movement, and he wanted to honor them. And he wanted to honor a 16-year-old Witte Kempfner who was part of the resistance, who blew up an ammunition truck. Still, die Nacht ist euch gesternt und der Frost hat stark gebrannt. Sie gedenkst du, wie ich hab dich gelernt. Halten a Speyer in die Hand. Sie gedenkst du, wie ich hab dich gelernt. Halten a Speyer in die Hand. A Moi, a Pelzer und a Beret. Und halt den Hand fest an a Gang. A Moid mit der Sammeten im Ponym. Hit up dem Säunes Karawan. A Moid mit der Sammeten im Ponym. Hit up dem Säunes Karawan. Gezielt, geschossen und getroffen. Hat der Kleininke Pistol ein Auto auf Fuhrlenken mit Waffen. Verhalten hat sie mit den Kohl ein Auto auf Fuhrlenken mit Waffen. Verhalten hat sie mit den Kohl. Vertog von Waldereus gekrochen, mit Schnee gelanden auf die Hohl, gemutigt von kleinen Genitzochen, fahr unser nahem Freien Da wir mutig von kleinen Genitzochen fahr unser nahem freien da.
That was beautiful, Fran, and very inspirational. Thank you so much. Next is okay.
That's on the program.
What are you doing?
Next on the program.
Oh, okay.
I invite you to rise for El Malarachamim, please. And I'll recite the version that we find in our Yizkor for those who perished in the Shoah, in memory of the 6 million. El Malarachamim, Shochin Bamiromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachar Kanvei Ashchina. B'malot gedashim taharim, Zohar Akiyam Azirim, Nishmat Chalachenu B'nei Yisrael, Shenidbechu v'shoah, Anashim Nashim B'taf, Shenechnegu, V'shenisrefu, V'shnehegu, Shemasu et nafsham al kiddush Hashem, B'gan Eden Tevu Chatam, Hanavarachamim, Hastireim B'Seter Kinafecha Leolamim, Uteror B'Teror, Achayim Enishmodehem, Adonai Unachal Adam, Ve'aduchu V'Shalom, Hamid Gebotehem, V'nomar. Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. To the souls of our brethren who perished in the Shoah, men, women, and children of the house of Israel who were slaughtered and suffocated and burned to ashes. May their memory endure and inspire deeds of charity and goodness in our lives. May their souls thus be bound up in the bond of life. May they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Okay, there was okay, I'm going to take a moment to a break in the program. Eileen Levine was prepared to do Ailey Ailey, but she took sick this week and was unable to be here today. And her husband, Mark, is also plagued by the same disease. So they're both sick at home, but their thoughts are with us here. And I just wanted to mention that Eileen Levine has participated in this program for many years, and it's much appreciated that she's the first one to volunteer to participate in this program and help the Men's Club put on meaningful programs from year to year. So Eileen, please get better soon so you could be with us in person and enjoy our company in all our events throughout the year. So again, our prayers for you and Mark for a speedy recovery. El Malay Rachamin was read by our cantor, Zev Brooks, for those in cyber world who are not familiar with the people in our congregation. Okay, next is Ailey, and stepping in for Eileen will be Cantor Fran Chalin.
And everybody else. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachov hayam, rishruch shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat Adam, Achov Hayam, Rishru Shel Hamayim, Berak Hashamayim, Tfilat Adam. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the sounds of the heaven, the prayer of the heart.
I think we're going to give Fran a rest here, and she has several more selections she's going to beautifully sing for us. But Zev, can you, Cantor Zev Brooks will now take the bima here and lead us in the 23rd Psalm.
This can be found on the second to last page in your program. I'll read a line in Hebrew, and how you do is take it line by line to the period in English. So I'll read this responsibly, Hebrew and English. Mizmor David, Adonai Ro'i Lo Echsar. That's how you read. The Lord is my shepherd. Binot Deshe Yarbitzeini. Amei Menuchonot Yinahaleni. Nafshi Yeshovev. Anchini v'ma'alei tzedek l'ma'an shemo. Gam keilech begait salmavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shiftecha mishantecha hema inachamuni. Taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai. Tishanta v'shemen roshi kosi ravaya. Ach tov v'chesed yudufuni. Kol yemei chayai. Shavti beveit Adonai le'orech yamim. Thank you.
Okay, break's over, Fran. A lighter moment. She will next sing selection 12 on your program, A Song of Resistance. You did it? Oh, okay. Excuse me, we did that already. I have to brush up on my Yiddish. 13, a Yiddish son, Zognet Kane Mal, and Cantor Fran will sing that for us.
And part of the resistance movement. Sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Gott Himmeln bleien, verstellen, bleue Tag, sing it with me. Warum wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show? Es wird abheucht an unser Trott mehr seinen da. Warum wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show? Es wird abheucht an unser Trott mehr seinen da. Von grünen Palmenland bis weiten Land von Schnee. Wir kommen und mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Wo gefallen ist ein Spritz von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Gewore, unser Mut. Und wo gefallen ist ein Spritz von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Gewore, unser Mut. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Es ist nicht kein Lied von einer Vogel auf der Frei. Das hat der Fuchs zwischen fallen dicke Wand. Das Lied gesungen mit ne Garnis in die Hand. A Fuchs zwischen fallen dicke Wand. Das Lied gesungen mit ne Garnis in die Hand. Da sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Gott Himmeln bleien, verstellen, bleue Tag. Warum wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show? Es wird abheucht an unser Trott mehr seinen da. Warum wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show? Es wird abheucht an unser Trott mehr seinen da.
That was a very inspirational rendition of the partisan song. Thank you, Fran, again. Next on the program, we're going to hear from our speaker, our featured speaker today. Alan Myers will give a brief introduction of our speaker, and then you will hear Ildi Good speak. Alan, you want to give some brief remarks about Ildi's background?
I'm going to sit here and put the mic here so that I can refer to the pictures.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very honored to be here today. Can you hear me? I think I can. Okay. As I said, I'm very honored to be here today to speak about my experience. But before I do that, I just want to say my previous affiliation with the synagogue. I came from New York in 1975 with my then husband, and we came cross-country, and we were supposed to be a couple of places for the high holidays before we arrived here. And the rabbi in New York, whom I knew, Rabbi Gershfield, I don't know if anybody knew of him. He was a member of the Beth Din, a very well-known rabbi, and I knew him quite well, and I called him, I said, I'm coming to California, and I'll be on my way during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Where are we stopping? He says, well, stop in Albuquerque. There is a nice synagogue, write to them, and then at the end, 2 days before Yom Kippur, you'll be in Orange County, because we already had a house in Orange County, and my husband had a position at Rockwell. So I wrote to both synagogues, and lo and behold, we arrived in Albuquerque at the synagogue. Nobody knew of us. So we find out we got relegated to some TV room downstairs. And then when the rabbi later found out the next day that we were here, he got very upset that they never told him that we would be arriving. Well, we came here, and I have to tell you, we had a wonderful, wonderful welcome. Rabbi Tofield at that time, who many of you probably know, was a rabbi, and he greeted us and welcomed us. So it was a wonderful Yom Kippur here, which was my first introduction to Orange County, which was nothing like New York. So it was, of course, nothing like New York in many ways, lots of orange groves, and culturally not the best, but look at it, what it is now and how wonderful it is now. So that's my recollection of my introduction to Beth Emet, and then we were members for a couple of years, and then, as many of you know, a group of members, including, which we talked to today, Bob Sklar, they formed B'nai Israel and moved down south, where we lived more south also. So we kind of migrated with the group. So that was, I just thought I would tell you that I have been here before, and I had some very wonderful services here. And I think your father was after Rabbi Tofield, so I knew him also. So I'm dating myself, but that's okay. Well, let me tell you about, I am a Hungarian, originally from Debrecen, which was the third largest town in Hungary. And my parents were married in 1938, actually on the day when Anschluss happened. So it was kind of it was an ominous day. And I brought a collage that my late husband put together so that you have an idea of my family and who is who. So my parents' beautiful wedding in 1938 in March, and I was born the next year in 1939, so you can calculate, I was just 85 this February. And what happened was we had a wonderful life, and as you can see, my dad, who was an attorney, he wanted to be actually a doctor, but those days they had numerus clausus, which was quota, just like here, that so many Jewish young men or women can go to medical school, and he did not make it. The town we lived in, this third largest town in Hungary, was a very well-known, they had a very well-known university. In fact, several people who went there came to America later and became head of departments at Mount Sinai Hospital. So it was a very well-known city with a big forest. There's actually a song about it. It's a very pretty city. And then he couldn't get in, so he took the next best thing, which was a lawyer. It's nothing bad about lawyer, but he really wanted to be a doctor. And he said, later, when I have a chance, I'll go back to medical school. So here you could see him in his office, very attractive gentleman. And then I was born in 39, as I said, and you can see the bond between my father and me. He really wanted a son, but turned out to be a girl. And he still loved me very much. And we had a wonderful, short-lived relationship, because 1942, it wasn't yet the German Nazis, but the Hungarian Nazis were getting organized, and they decided that they're going to take, by that time there was a war, that time they're going to take what was called labor camp, but it really was not a labor camp, as it turned out. They took all the best and brightest of our town and many other towns and said that they're going to take them to the Russian front to fight. Well, so 1942, I was 3.5 years old. He got an order that he had to report to the authorities, and he was going to be taken away to a labor camp. And of course, my mother tells me, I mean, I don't really remember being 3.5, but that I hung on to him and I was crying and wouldn't let him go to leave. And eventually, of course, he had to go because he had to report. So he left, and my mother went to see him at the place before they got shipped out to the Russian front one time. And he also wrote 2 letters, which I still have, and every time I read it, it's in Hungarian, I get hysterical because he talked about me taking care of my mother. Of course, at 3.5, I couldn't, and she taking care of me. And it's in fact, I don't know, I've been thinking about where I'm going to give this letter, what museum or something, because it's a very important document for somebody who was being shipped out actually to die, which we did not know. We just knew that he would be shipped to the Russian front and fight. Then came 1944. By then the Germans came to Hungary and came to, first of all, they did not come to Budapest. They came to the smaller towns where my grandparents lived. And you see them, my grandparents, my grandfather who was 88, my grandmother who was 78. And they happened to be able to go up to Budapest, but the rest of the family, who was in this town called Nyíregyháza, was a town in Hungary, not too far from where I was born. They started in the outskirts. They didn't start in Budapest. Budapest was the last area. So they started, so we were like the second or third town that was occupied by the Germans. And what they did was, so many of you know, you heard of the word ghetto, that they would say, first of all, you had to turn in all valuables, silver, gold, anything that was valuable. Now, there were, of course, certain people who didn't want to turn it in, so they buried in their backyard. Guess what? If the Germans found out that somebody buried something, they would beat them, sometimes even kill them. So that was the start. So my mother had to turn in her candelabra, silver, and her jewelry and everything. She was not a type to go and try and hide anything, because she was very scared. She was here with a 5-year-old child, and I had a grandmother from my father's side, and my aunt. Her husband was also taken for labor, forced labor. So then we got an edict that everybody has to go and move from their apartment or houses to a smaller area, which was considered the large, they called it the large ghetto. Well, it wasn't so large, but a large ghetto. So all had to take in the people who didn't live in that square mile. So we were there for a couple of weeks. Then the next edict came down. Oh, that's too big. You need to move to a smaller area. So we all had to pack up the little things we had and moved into somebody else's house who happened to be in that square, half a square mile or a third of a square mile, and there we were. Then a couple of weeks went by, and then what happened was, now you're going to be shipped. We had no idea where we're going to be shipped, so they were taken out to the, near the railroad station, there was a brick factory. And that's where we got housed. It was like brick factory buildings, which were not really suitable for people with children. And I got very, very, very sick. I had like 100 and something fever, and my mother didn't know if I'm going to live or die. There was, no medical facilities. And they told us that because I was so sick, they're going to move us to another area. And that's what, in the long run, I found out saved us. So a couple of days went by, and they started, which, we didn't know. We were in that separate area. They started to put everybody in cattle wagons from our town, from that area near the railroads. And here I have a picture of 3 of us. I am the one on the left side with the long braids, and 2 other children of my friends, and they were in the wagons, the transport that went to Auschwitz, and of course, they never came back. So what happened to us was, because we were not exactly there, in another area, we got put into these cattle wagons also another day later. Nobody had any idea where we're going, what's going to happen. We were like sheep that, I think about it now, and I say to myself, we just went like to the slaughterhouse. I mean, nobody said, we're not going. What do you mean you're not going? You got shot. There was nobody who didn't follow orders. So everybody followed whatever was told. And thinking about it back now, would we do it again? I don't know. But it was, if you didn't follow orders, you weren't alive in the next 10 seconds. So we got put into this wagon, and like the song said, into the cattle wagon, quite a lot of us, and we had a little package, and they threw, and the train started to go, and we had no idea where we're going, of course. The Germans, of course, were extra thoughtful how to make somebody more miserable than we already were. And that was the train. It was already May of 1944. It was warm. The train would stay the whole day, didn't move. So the train got, you can imagine, a closed train with lots of people in it, extremely hot. At night, it started to go up and down and up and down. So when we would try and sleep, we couldn't sleep because the train was. So this happened for 7 days. We were en route for 7 days, and we had no idea where we're going. Nobody knew. And they would throw in some food every day, some soup or something. They opened the car doors, the doors of the train, and we got some food, and they took out the waste and poured it out. So it was a terrible situation. Then on the 7th day, we arrived in a place called Schwehat, which was an outskirt of Vienna. Again, we didn't know when we got there, but once we got there, we found out where we are. And we were at the outskirts of Vienna, sort of a camp. It wasn't really a camp. And then from there, we got dispersed. And we wound up, my mother, my grandmother, my aunt, and me wound up in Vienna in a school. Next to, again, of course, a railroad station. Now, why is railroad station so important? Because they bomb railroad stations, because that's where all the supplies go out. So they bombed them. So we were put in a school next to a railroad station. And we were there locked up for 11 months. So you can imagine a child of 5 to going to 6 cannot go outside for 11 months. Now the able-bodied were taken every day. They were assigned to different foremen to take them to work. And my mother, who went to finishing school, she became a wife of a prominent lawyer. What happened to her? She was becoming a roofer. So every time they would bomb Vienna, this roofing contractor had, 10, 20 Holocaust people, and he would take them and repair the roofs. So my mother, when she left, I had no idea. And there were bombing going on because the Allies were bombing Vienna. If you have seen pictures of the Opera House and other things in Vienna, they were all demolished. So here we were. When my mother left, she had no idea when she comes back, if I'm still there, since the camp could have been bombed. And when she left, I had no idea if she's coming back, because wherever she went, I was a child. And so that went on, and so it was a very traumatic situation for me, and my grandmother was the only one because she was already in her 60s, so she wasn't taken labor for external labor. So what happened was this went on, and not only that, daily we got from the Führer, who was the head of the camp, lectures that if we do this, this will happen to the parents. If they do this, this will happen to us. So, it was psychological. It was a psychological torture for all this time. Then, and again, things change. We were told, and in fact, one time, I have to tell you that the Austrians, as many of you probably know, the Austrians were not very fond of their Jewish neighbors. They were taken away also, and the Austrians did not do anything to prevent it. So one time my mother, which she told me later, was on one of these assignments with the foreman, and they got to a building, and the bombing started. And the foreman wanted to take all himself and all his Jewish people, his Jewish workers, gone down to the shelter. And what did the Austrians say? Keine Juden here, meaning no Jews in the shelter. So it looked like they'll be staying up and the bombs were flying around. Last second, I don't know how, but he was able to get everybody into the shelter. And what happened was the building was bombed. So had they been outside, had they not been able to go to the shelter, they would all have been dead. So that's what I'm saying, daily worry, even as a child, that your mother leaves, and does she come back? So then we got a notice that we're going to be moved again. We had no idea again where we were going, where we're moving, packing up our little things, and we got taken to the same railroad area where we arrived 11 months earlier, and we got into trains again, and cattle wagons. And later we found out that we were supposed to go to Theresienstadt, from where definitely children were shipped to Auschwitz. So, but we didn't know. We were in the train, all locked up, and suddenly bombing. A couple of the cars of this train, people died, and it turned out that was the time that the Russian bombed the trains, the train tracks, and anything around it. So the train track in front of us and the part of our train was bombed, and suddenly there were Russians. The Germans all disappeared, and the Russians showed up. And my mother tells me I had an apron with the Jewish star on it, and they came around and ripped off all the Jewish stars from my apron and everybody else's clothing. And there we were, had no idea what is going to happen. The luck was that train, the one in front of us, had a lot of food on it, like sugar and a lot of food that was going to be taken to the front, and also wheelbarrows. So several very enterprising people got all the wheelbarrows and got all the food out of there. There was nobody in charge because the Russian bombed, and then there were some Russians there, but we were kind of, where are we going to go next? So what happened was that people who haven't seen sugar in a year, there were sacks, and the sacks opened up, and they were on the ground, and people were licking up the sugar from the ground. So we saw first sugar and other things. So everybody got a wheelbarrow, I guess whoever could get a wheelbarrow, and somebody said, well, we should go to Czechoslovakia. Well, some people, I guess, knew where Czechoslovakia was. My mother just followed, and my grandmother and my aunt, and started walking. And we walked for a week. And during the night, now the problem was that the Russians, the soldiers who haven't seen a woman in a year, decided, good time to get acquainted. So every night we would stop someplace where we saw burned out buildings, so we would go and stay for the night. And what the Russians would do is the soldiers would go into each of these places where there were people, including women, and take them, and they say, going to take them for peeled potatoes. That's all they could say in Hungarian. We take them to peel potatoes. Well, they weren't taking them to peel potatoes. They were taking them to be raped. So somehow or other, my mother and my aunt decided what we would do is that my mother and my aunt would be on the bottom, and my grandmother and I would be on top. So when they come in and use the flashlight, they would see a little girl and an old lady. So they walked out. So that's how we saved my mother and my aunt from being taken advantage by the Russians. So after a week, we arrived in Bratislava, in Czechoslovakia. So as I said, somebody knew how to get there. And then we had hayas and then trains, and we were taken back to Hungary. And of course, our apartment was occupied by some good Nazis, so it was very difficult for us to get back part of the apartment, at least my mother and I, and we were waiting and waiting and waiting for my father to come back. Some people came back, and he never came back. He was 37 years old, and we found out later that the brigade he was in, called the 9th Brigade, which I've been trying to find out a little bit more about it. The 9th Brigade, 900 people were in it. One escaped. Now, they didn't die on the front. They were killed by the Nazis. Every day, 10 men who were in this brigade were taken to the forest and shot. We found that out later. It's very cold in here. Is there any way we could turn the air down? A little bit. I'm freezing. I'll continue, Monica. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Especially talking like this. Yeah, no, it's very cool.
No, I don't need I have a blanket. Yeah, but
Temperatures in here, too hot and too cold.
yes, there's nothing in between, right? So anyway, so we went back, and then, of course, 1945, and I was 6 years old, and I went to first grade, Jewish school, and then in 1950, my mother and I moved up to Budapest, where we had some relatives. Now, as far as I was telling you about my grandparents, whom you see there, and they were very, very, very Orthodox. And my grandmother had a shaitel, and they were very, very Orthodox. But my mother was not very Orthodox. She was more like conservative in Hungary. And they were shipped up to Budapest. My uncle was able to do that and put them into like assisted living, and they were already older, and so they went there. And of course, the Hungarian Nazis, I always say they were almost as bad as the German Nazis. There was somebody named Kunpater who went into this place, this assisted living or nursing home, which he was not supposed to go because it was supposed to be a safe house, but he disregarded that. And what did he do? And I have to tell you one thing very interesting. My grandmother, as I said, she was very, very religious and believed in faith, and believed in what a rabbi would say, and she was very, very, she always used to tell my mother, how do we arrange that we die together? They've been together since age 16 and 26. They got married then. They didn't even know, they never saw each other before the wedding. But they had 14 children, 7 survived, and they loved each other like unbelievable, unbelievable. My grandmother was not a good sleeper. My father used to go to school in the morning, would kiss her. She woke up, couldn't go back to sleep. Never told him, all the years, that you woke me up. For him, it was a pleasure to kiss her before he left for school, and that's how it was. So it was so I always said, I can't live without your father. He can't live without me. How do we arrange it with God? My mother said, well, I guess you could pray, but, So they were together in this home. So this Nazi came in and shot them all and put the place on fire. So the only thing they found is bones. So the only solace is no solace, but the only thing that my mother said, her wish came true. They died together. Because that was always her wish. How do we arrange it? Well, the Nazis arranged it. And my late husband and I went to Budapest. We tried to go to the cemetery where the bones are buried in an old Orthodox cemetery, but it's locked up. So we took, I think, a picture from a mile away or something where the guide, a man who drove us, the taxi driver, said that's the only place you could even look into the cemetery. So I never been to the cemetery where they are buried. And I don't know the date when they died. I don't know the date when my father died. So what I do, just as a side issue, side comment, I light the yahrzeit candle tonight because I have no date. I have no idea what date they passed away. So that's my date. And then, so we were in Budapest up till 56, and then, as many of you know, the Hungarian Revolution happened. And we could not get out before. I always wanted to leave because the problem was I was not, even though I was a good student, I should have gone to university if I wanted to, but I couldn't have. I was not age yet, but I couldn't have because since my father was a lawyer, I was not a desirable element in Hungary. I was not what's called the proletariat, where I would have been children of workers. I was in a class that they didn't want to promote. So I have friends who was brilliant. He went to teach at MIT eventually. He worked in a factory. He was already older than me because his father owned a factory and he couldn't get into university. So that was the mentality. So as far as the life would not have been a good life in Hungary. And of course, Jewish, I remember one Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah, when I was in high school, the principal came into every room and said, if you don't come tomorrow to class, you better have a good excuse. So we all ran to our doctors that we had strep throat and 103 fever, and I went to synagogue. My mother could not get off her work, but I went by myself. To anybody who has been to Budapest, there's a great synagogue in Budapest, and we lived not too far from there, so I went there by myself. And so it was not a very good situation for Jews under the communists. So in 56, we with my cousin and his family. We escaped, walked 60 miles in the mud. We finally arrived in Austria, and then 11 months later came to America, came to New York, and went to school there. I never finished actually high school. When I have to put in, where did you go to high school? First of all, I don't know the name, and secondly, I never graduated, but they took me to college because I had the knowledge, because if you finished high school, they would have given you 2 years or a year to start the college. So that's, and then as I mentioned earlier, 75, I came to California. So that's, and here, the very end is where my mother and I, in Santa Ana, not too far from here where she lived. She passed away in 1997, and she never remarried, and she never got over my father's death. He was 37 when they killed him. So, you know, it's still, even though I'm now 85 years old, I still think a lot about that, what it is not having a father. I mean, there are some situations where people, you know, have an accident or a car or an illness, but to die in such a way and such a promising life, it has been, even now I think about it all the time. These past couple of weeks, getting ready for the memorial service at Chapman, speaking, and I also speak in schools. I go to schools, and also I do a lot of, through the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles. There's somebody who set me up with a lot of Zoom. In fact, my next one is June 16. Speaking, I don't know to whom, but several schools during the past couple of years I spoke to, and some individuals. In fact, I had a wonderful experience. I spoke to a young man, Jacob, Shmurak, who was getting a bar mitzvah at Bat Yam 2 years ago, and this was during COVID, end of COVID, so we spoke under. And he said, I said, I'll come to your bar mitzvah. I didn't think that it's going to be serious. And sure enough, they invited me, not only the service, he told my story on the bima, and invited me to the Kiddush lunch, and they invited me to the evening festivities. So it was a very, kind of a nice reward for my talking. So that's, now I am going to open it up for questions.
So when you talk to the schools, do you tell the same story that
Basically,
you shared with us?
basically, yes.
Do you tell them a conclusion, a moral, or something?
Well, they ask me what do I advise them, and what do I advise them? What would I try, and if they see something bad, to stand up for it and not allow it to happen. And I have to tell you another little story that happened to me when I was, 11 or 12. I was in junior high. And I was, as I said, I was a very good student. I loved math and everything. I loved to study. And in Hungary, it's not like here that everything is a written exam. They call you up and you have to tell the answer. And this girl who was not just dumb, but she didn't want to study, but she's going to go to university, so it was, not a pleasant thought. I would help her. Say what the answer is, quietly, so that she could say, the answer is, and there was a correct answer. So one time, somehow or other, she found out that I was Jewish, 12. And she said, if I have known that you were Jewish, I wouldn't have sat next to you. That was 1952, 1951. Now you can imagine, huh?
Next time, give her the wrong answers.
The time was I almost choked her. They had to restrain me because I was going after her. But what I'm saying is that somehow or other, the Hungarians unfortunately have this in them that they hate Jews. They hate Jews. They still hate Jews. Look at Orban. You know? So it was inbred in them that they hated Jews. It didn't matter that I was helping her.
Elvie, we were in Budapest, where we were on the Danube, and they have all these shoes.
Yes. Yes.
You were too young to know what was.
They killed a lot of people. They threw them into the Danube, and then yes.
And you were too young to know about Raoul Wallenberg?
I was too young. Actually, I knew somebody in Los Angeles, a friend of mine, who was in a Wallenberg safe house, and that's how he survived. But as I said, sometimes, like my grandparents, they were in a supposedly safe house. This man who went in, they hung him later in 46 or 47. There was a trial, and he was found guilty. He took it upon himself to go into an old age home and shoot everybody and put it on fire. So that's what I'm saying. We used to say in Hungarian, not in Hungarian, translated into English, that it comes with their mother's milk. They are anti-Semitic with their mother's milk. So that was so I couldn't wait to leave, as you can imagine. When I went through this first, my father killed, my grandparents killed, me in a concentration camp for 11 months. And then somebody says, if I knew that you were Jewish, I wouldn't sit next to you because you're contaminated. I mean, this is the mentality. And even now, when I'm at a doctor's office and it's no windows, and they close the door, I said, please don't close the door, because I was locked up for 11 months. I couldn't go out. As a child, my mother used to take me on a streetcar. We had, one of the beauties of this town we lived in was a forest. It's called the large forest. They have a song about it. So I would play in the forest, and suddenly, 11 months, at age 5, I couldn't go out. So you can imagine, I couldn't get fresh air. And here the talk about if you do this, if you do that, then your parents will be, this happened to them, and if they do this, then this. So it was psychological terror. So, as I said, I have remnants, or another situation that I very much, I don't know, still don't know, never learned. My father was an excellent tennis player. He would go and lift weights, and he was a very good athlete. Bicycle, everything. And he had my mother promise that she will have me learn how to swim. So when we came back from the camp, my mother hired an instructor, and I learned how to swim. But I never learned how to ride a bike. And I lived in Woodbridge for a while. And, I don't know if anybody knows, but there's a lake. And I saw fathers teaching their children how to ride a bike. And guess what? I broke down. I was hysterical. Because I never learned how to ride a bike. My mother, as I said, she went to finishing. She was first of all, very protective. And secondly, she didn't even know how to swim, nothing. She was a very protected child. She was the only girl out of 7 children. 7 of them died in childhood, and 7 survived. She was the only girl. So she never sat on a chair because she always sat on somebody's lap. So she was very, very, not just spoiled, so she certainly wouldn't teach me how to ride a bike. So I never learned how to ride a bike. And so these things, what I'm trying to say is that these little things, it's not a big deal, ride a bike, don't ride a bike, but these things that hit one when you are confronted, seeing somebody riding or teaching how to ride a bike, where I had nobody to teach me how to ride a bike. So these are the remnants of
Married, children,
I have I got married, and the gentleman, I came out to California with, and then after a while we got divorced, and then I remarried in '89 to a wonderful, wonderful man, and he had children, and so I don't. I am a grandmother and a great grandmother, but I'm not a real one. And unfortunately, he died 11 years ago of septic shock, 2 days before Rosh Hashanah. So I kind of am alone, but I have good friends.
You've left a deep impression on them.
Huh?
You've left a deep impression on them.
Thank you. I may have talked too long, but I appreciate you listening attentively. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Did I hope I didn't just... Huh? Yes, my late husband and I went back. In fact, I took him back to the apartment that we lived in when I was born, and took him back to in Budapest where I lived. So yes, we went back, and we went, as I said, we tried to go to the cemetery, but no, my second husband was American, from Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., and he was a wonderful person, but unfortunately at 72 he passed away. So if anybody knows any nice gentleman who is looking for, doesn't mind a walker, and likes music, send them my way. I did have a very nice gentleman who is also a survivor, but his house had a problem, and his daughter took him to Seattle and put him in an old-age home, and he's there. So I lost my companion.
Yeah, my husband's family was from Hungary, but they got out way, like I think in 1920, because my husband used to tell the story that his grandfather came, I think, right after his mom was born, or 3 or 4 in 1913, and then he said one by one he sent to the family. But yeah, they got. But I think there was family there that unfortunately did get, you know.
And I used to ask my mother a lot, I would say, how come? I mean, when this happened in Austria, in all over, but you know, there was no television, they didn't know that much, and they said, well, nobody thought it would come to Hungary. And there was actually a movie, I don't remember the name, about famous fencers who were very, 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 very famous, and they said, you know, we are famous, they were Jewish. Didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Nothing mattered. As long as you were Jewish, even I know people who converted. Didn't matter. You had to be 2, 3 generations before not Jewish to not count as Jewish. I mean, they really got this down to a science.
We're going to Budapest next month.
Oh, you're going? Well, go. Have you been there before? But have you been there before? No. Then go to, of course, the great synagogue. Doheny Street. That is Doheny Street. Yeah, Doheny Street. It's a beautiful synagogue. In fact, we were there. It happened that there was a klezmer concert, so we went, and then later. I found out that the man who gave the klezmer concert is a very well-known klezmer player in San Diego. Strom, and I met him because I belonged to University Synagogue, and he came to speak and play. And so I met him, and he says, you were in Budapest when I played there? I mean, it was just a funny coincidence. Okay. Well, thank you for listening to me.
sit there, take care. Okay. We only have 2 items left on the program. Next, Fran. She's here, okay. Fran will lead us in God Bless America. The song is in your program.
Along with your cantor, Deputy.
So you start, I'll sing with you.
Oh, I don't know that part. Do you know that part?
Just try.
Okay. God bless America,
Land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu.
Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu. Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu. Ve'olam. Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu. Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu. Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu. Ve'al Kulam.
Salam. Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam. Shalom. Salam.
Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Shalom. Shalom. Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu. Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu. Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu. Ve'al kulam. Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu. Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu. Oh, Devo Shalom Aleinu. Ve'al kulam. Okay.
Thank you, Fran and Zev, for the final 2 songs to lead us in these meaningful prayers. That concludes our formal program. Again, thanks to Alan Myers for his wonderful work in putting this all together for us, and to all the congregants who participated in the program. We thank you for your participation, and with God's blessing, may we again assemble next year again for this meaningful program. Now, we are not through yet. We have a minyan, a Shiva minyan, following this program for Charlene Schwed in the honor of the passing of her brother. So we ask that you please stay in your place and join us in the minyan. It's a brief service, be led by Cantor Brooks, and we should lend our support to Charlene. Also, there's 2 more minions, Monday night and Tuesday night, right here in this same chapel at 7 p.m. in the evening. Please join us again to show our support for Charlene, who is so dear to all of us. But before we get to that, Jenny Levy will address the congregation here with a very special project the temple is conducting, and she wishes to promote this project to all of you and gain your support. Jenny, please come to the bema.
First, thank you so much for this wonderful program. Thank you to the Men's Club. Thank you to Alan Myers. And thank you to our wonderful, wonderful speaker. You touched my heart. I mean, my parents went through it too. And some of the stories... I just wanted to say thank you. But the reason I wanted to address everyone is, you know, one of the questions when Marty first spoke was, what could they have done in the past? How could Jews have helped? What could we do to save a life? What can we do? And I have to tell you, we have an opportunity. It's a little different, but by purchasing an ambulance, we can, for Israel, through Magen David Adom, we can save a life. We can save many lives. And so, I know I've said this 100 times before, but I can't stop saying it until we reach our goal. And we're close to our goal. We have a donor, an anonymous donor, who is matching up to $10,000. So if you have given, thank you, but give again. And if you haven't given, please, please, an ambulance from Magen David Adom will save so many lives. And unfortunately, we're losing so many. So we need everybody's help. Anything that you can give, anything, it doesn't matter. It could be $1, it could be $5, it could be $10,000. You know, whatever you give will be appreciated. So please, this is something that we can all do. So I just ask you to do it. Make out your checks to Magen David Adom, and if you could mark it to my attention and drop it off at the office, that would be awesome. Thank you. Yes?
I just want to say that there's something, you know, we cannot remain silent now.
Of course not.
Not now, not to remain silent.
No.
You know, well, I am going into details. My grandparents escaped from Hungary before World War I, where my grandfather was conscripted because he was Jewish to go become cannon fodder. Thank God he was just a prisoner of war in the Allies. I mean, this is what's going on now in this country. If we don't stand up, we have to learn the lessons of history.
Needless to say, I concur with you 100%. We cannot be quiet. We cannot. We have to let people know that you have to stand up for who you are and for what you believe in. And you can't just be quiet. You know, shah still does not work. Shah still does not work. We have to talk. We have to take action. We have to go out and demonstrate and be there so we can... We just have to be heard. We can't just sit idly by. But one of the ways that we can help, besides from speaking, is this ambulance. The ambulance will save lives. And so again, if you've given, thank you, toda haba. I don't know how to say thank you in Hungarian. How do you say thank you in Hungarian? Anyway, my parents were from Poland, and they went through everything in Poland, so I can say it in Polish, dziękuję. But in any case, in any language, whatever you can do, please, thank you.
So we'll be doing a quick mincha service this afternoon to provide those reciting Mourner's Kaddish an opportunity, including Charlene, on the passing of her brother. So the mincha service is actually found on our regular Shabbat Siddur on page 1. We're just going to be doing the way we would do it early on Friday evening before we start Kabbalat Shabbat. So if you want to, underneath your seat, there's probably a Siddur. Page 1. Good place to start. Okay. And again, the mincha service is very brief, and we'll do a Heichli Kedusha as well. Page 1. Page 1. Believe it or not, we're actually going to start on page 1. So we begin the mincha service with the Ashrei, and we'll cite this responsibly. Ashrei Ashrei v'techa, ori halalucha selah. Tila LeDavid Ar Mimcha Lahai HaMelech Bavarcha Shimcha Leolam Vaed. God Adonai Mehulal Meyod V'Ligdalato Ein Chiker. Hadar Kavod Odecha V'Divrei Niflotecha Sicha. Zicher of Tivchai Abihu V'Sid Kadecha Yiraninu. Tov Adonai L'Kol V'Racham Aval Kol Masav. Kivo Malchutecha Yomeru Gvuratecha Yedaberu. Malchutecha Malchut Kol Amim Memshadecha B'Chol Dor V'Dor. Eine Cholach Esaberu V'Tanotin Lahem Rachlam B'Tzoh. Tzadik Adonai B'Chol Racha V'Chasid B'Chol Masav. Ritzon Re'av Yaseh V'Yet Shabbat HaMishma V'Yoshiyeh. Tilat Adonai Yedaber Bi V'Varech Chobasar Shem Kol Sholeh Olam Va'ed V'Anachnu Nevarech Yah Me'adav Yad Olam Hallelujah. I invite you to rise if you can on bottom of page 2 for Chatzi Kaddish. Yikadav Yikadav Shemei Rabbaha Yalmad Yivrachu Tev Yam Nichma Chodi B'chaychol V'mechon V'chidachol Beit Yisrael V'agalav Yizman Kariv V'yimeru Amein Yehi Shemei Rabba Mibarach Le'olam Olmei Olmayah Yibrach V'shtabach V'yidbar V'yidbar V'yinaseh V'nadar V'yitalev V'yitalal Shmei D'Kudishah Hila Mikol Birchata V'shivata V'shivata V'nechmata V'ramelem Avimru. We'll turn to page 3b. We'll recite the beginning of the Midah for this Mincha service together. And then we go to the Kedusha, which can be found on page 4. And then we'll recite in silence the rest of the Tefillah, which concludes on page 9. It's also an opportunity to include your private prayer. So we begin on page 3b. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor V'Hanara El Yahod Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Gonei HaKol V'Zocher Chastei Avot Me'vigo El Ibnei Bneihem L'mad Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Cholkin Moshiach Magin Baruch Atah Adonai Magin Abraham Cholkin Sarah Ada Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayim Etim Atar Rav L'Hoshiach Morid HaTahal Mechagel Chayim B'Chesed Mechayim Etim Rachamim Rabim Somech Rovlim Rofei Cholim Matir Asurim Mechayim Unato Lishenei Afar Michamocha B'Hagivron U'Bidom Elach Melech Mimit U'Mechayim Atzmiach Yeshua V'nei Manad Elachayot Metim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayim Etim. Page 4. Nikadesh et Shimcha Ba'olam V'Shem Shmak Dishim Al Tobish Me'marom Kagatu Bayad Nevi'echa V'Kara Zeh Zeh V'Yamar Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvaot V'Lo Chol Haaretz Kivodo L'Umatam Baruch Yomeru V'Divrei Kodesh Katu V'Le'mohar Yimloch Adonai Le'olam Elohai Tzion L'Dor V'Dor Hallelujah L'Dor V'Dor Nagid Golecha L'Netzach L'Tzakim L'Shadecha Nakdish V'Shivchacha Eloheinu V'Pinu Le'amosh Le'olam Va'ed Ki HaMelech Kadosh Atah Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. take the time you need to finish your private prayer. We're going to continue with Kaddish Shalem. I invite you to rise on page 10, followed by the Aleinu on page 11. Hela mi kabel khada b'shivada, shulchada b'nechamata, dami ram lama v'imru. Tika bel satan v'odhon chayesra, gadam v'hon v'ishmaya v'imru. Ishtam ram mitshemay v'chayim alinu v'kol Yisrael v'imru. Oseh shalom b'mrama v'yaseh shalom alinu v'kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Alinu l'shabeach Adon Hakol, v'yaseh shalom Seated. So at this point, we're going to invite those observing a Yortzeit, reciting the Mourner's Kaddish, to rise on page 12 and recite with me the Mourner's Kaddish. And then this is a Shiva Minyan, so I'd like to do a selection from our Shiva Minyan book, and then we'll recite Mourner's Kaddish a second time. Page 12. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, bi'olma divrach derutei, bi'amlich malchutei, b'chayichon v'yomeichon, Chayid Chol Beit Yisrael, Bagala Ubizman Kari V'Yimru, Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah Mevarach, Le'olam Olmei Olmaya. Yitbarach V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yitalev, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudisha, Richu, Le'ila Min Kol Birlachata V'shirata, Dushbichata V'nechemata, the Amir Adnami Alma V'Imru, Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Alinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'Imru, Oseh Shalom B'Mrama, V'yaseh Shalom, Alinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'Imru. Amen. Please be seated. I'd like to read this for you. I know you don't have the book in your hand to follow along, but there are several selections, and this one I find to be, very meaningful and inspirational. You've heard this before, but I recite it again. A man had 3 friends. One friend he loved dearly, the second he also loved, but the third he regarded with less affection. One day the king commanded this man to appear immediately before him. The man was greatly alarmed. Had someone spoken ill of him or falsely accused him Before his king, in fear and trembling, he called upon each of his 3 friends to accompany him. First, he turned to his dearest friend and was greatly disappointed when this friend found it impossible to go with him to the king. He then turned to his second friend. "Will you go with me?" The latter replied, "I will go with you, but only as far as the palace gates. I cannot enter with you into the palace." In desperation, the man finally appealed to his third friend, the one to whom he had been least devoted. Without hesitation, this neglected friend assured him, "Of course I will accompany you, but first I'll go immediately to the palace and plead for you with the king." The first friend is a man's wealth, which he must leave behind when he departs from this world, as it is written, "Riches profit not in the day of reckoning." The second friend is a man's relatives, who can only follow him to the graveside, as it is written, "No man can by any means redeem his brother from death." The third, least considered friend are the good deeds of a man's life. These never desert him, and even precede him to plead his cause before the King of Kings, as it is written, "And your righteousness shall go before you." I invite you again to rise. Mourner's Kaddish, page 12, to conclude our service. Yeah.
This afternoon, we are marking Yom HaShoah. We just lit 6 yard-side candles for 6 million Jews. I intend to stand for Kaddish for all of that.
Okay. Very nice. We'll do page 12 then, Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. V'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich machlutei. V'chai echon v'yom echon. V'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Bagala v'izman kariv imru. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yit hadar, v'yit aleh, v'yit halal, shemei d'kudisha, brichlu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, v'shbichata v'nechemata, da'amiran mi'alma v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mroma, v'yaseh shalom aleinu, v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Again, thank you all for being here, both for the participation in the Yom HaShoah service and, of course, to lend your support to Charlene. We'll have a Shiva meeting tomorrow at 7 o'clock here and on Tuesday as well. And I think during that time, maybe you can speak a little bit about your brother.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it.
Okay.
Just a brief announcement before we go to the multipurpose room for refreshments. Tonight, after sunset, you are to light your Yom HaShoah candle that you've picked up. If some of you have not received a candle, see me now. They are available for distribution. There's still time. And after sunset tonight, you must light it. Inside the package is instructions with a prayer to recite while you light the candle. Thank you all for participating in this wonderful program. Marty, do you want a candle? Let us know when you're leaving. We'll help you with the picture.